There's not many things that are more tense than the thought of having to live in a world of complete silence, as every sound you make, even so much as a sneaky fart, could bring a load of violent alien creatures down on you. Having enjoyed the movie franchise A Quiet Place and the tension that those movies brought, this game being announced made me excited, making me think back to the days of playing Alien Isolation. So today we'll be diving into the story from Storm Mind Games' recently released spin-off video game set in the world of A Quiet Place. Fun fact is that these are the same developers behind the remothered franchise of games which I've covered on the channel previously. With this game, the gameplay mechanics were pretty interesting, but it's nothing new, as horror games have been doing the whole microphone noise mechanic for a while now. There were some cool gadgets to use and also some really tense moments, like when one of these arseholes walked straight at you, and the game did look graphically impressive. This game did lean more into the world building aspect rather than the character building one, as there are various side stories to discover in different areas. Your character has asthma, which in a world that now requires complete silence, inhalers not being very quiet, and the slightest exertion and dust making your character's lungs explode, is not ideal. The game did feel a little bit sluggish and slow at times, but I mean, that's to be expected. If you've watched the films, there's not a lot of running going on, just creeping around. And if you're unlucky enough to be heard by a creature, well, let's just say there's not really any chance to escape. The environment makes natural ambient sounds such as the wind, which needs to be monitored so that your footsteps don't give away your position. This makes an attempt to take a puff from the inhaler an exercise in perfect timing. With all that being said, I did enjoy my time with this game, but it's not something that I feel I would need to play through again for all the collectibles. As for timeline, the bulk of this spin-off story takes place after A Quiet Place Day 1, and before A Quiet Place and A Quiet Place Part 2, with the latter two taking place over a year after the invasion took place. Before we jump into the story, I need to let you know there will be obvious story spoilers for the game in this video, as well as spoilers for the movies too, but let's dive in. So it's not known the exact date that it happened, but one day meteorites entered Earth's atmosphere and landed on the planet. People were just going about their daily lives when those lives were ripped apart. Meteors landed in New York City, a small rural town called Millbrook, Mexico and Shanghai, and many more. The problem wasn't the meteorites though, it was more the creatures attached to the meteorites. Having survived the landing, the creatures, blind and equipped with highly evolved biosonar and echolocation, started trying to find the source of every single sound, and in a world that has sounds everywhere, this resulted in absolute chaos, and lots of death. The creatures themselves, which would be named listeners or death angels, were from a planet with no light, from another galaxy entirely, a hellish world without a star. The meteorites were a result of their home planet exploding. Due to their planet having a higher gravitational pull than Earth, the creatures, when on Earth, were lighter, stronger, and much faster. The fact that they had near indestructible armor all over their body, including their faces, made them near impossible to kill. One young girl and her mother did manage to inadvertently find a way to stun and kill these creatures by shooting or damaging the exposed fleshy areas underneath their armor as they scan for sound. It seems they are in a hierarchy of sorts, and they do feed, as in Day 1 a sort of alpha death angel seems to be leading a group of them. Now, as the creatures hunt anything that makes sound, what happened in places like New York, with an average decibel rating of 90 decibels, the sound of a constant scream, was a bloodbath. The creatures wreaked havoc, and this resulted in the military being ordered to blow up the bridges from Manhattan Island, preventing people, but more importantly, the creatures from escaping. It was discovered that the creatures cannot swim as their bodies are so dense, so survivors would jump into the water to try and survive. Boats would attempt to escort survivors to islands surrounded by bodies of water. Over time, people would find ways of communicating, such as talking behind things that could cover the sound, such as waterfalls, heavy rainfall, or if that fails, by using sign language. But let's link into our story. One day, Alex is celebrating her birthday and is hanging out with her friend Martin. They spot a deer and Martin hears a sound and goes to check it out. Eventually, after making her way round a path and through an abandoned shack, she is scared by Martin, who attempted to pull a prank on her. She starts to hyperventilate and has an asthma attack, and Martin's mother Laura shows up. Thankfully, she manages to calm Alex down, and Martin heads back to the house. Her and Laura take a short walk to the Edwards home, which is holding a small celebration. There in attendance is Alex's father, Kenneth, who is grieving his wife, and Alex's mother, who has recently passed after an illness, Laura's husband Robert, and of course their son Martin. Awaiting the food, Alex speaks with Martin and he apologizes for scaring her. She forgives him and they discuss how they've developed feelings for one another. Laura asks him to go and find a bottle opener, so they head inside. After, Alex, revealed to be a singer, is impressed by some records that Laura owns, and then Martin says he wants to show her something and they head up to the attic. It's there that Alex spots a lot of guns and learns that Laura works on a reserve and carries out population control on the animals. Anyway, they hear a conversation outside, and it's Laura and Kenneth speaking about the death of his wife Julia. All of a sudden, they hear a rumbling, and looking to the skies, burning meteorites are falling from the sky towards Earth. It's not clear how, but they eventually find out about the mysterious creatures and how they are a danger to human life. Alex, Martin, Laura, and Robert hop into a van and drive away onto the freeway where pandemonium is unfolding as the creatures hunt every single sound. They're talking about how Kenneth has already gone to the hospital, as he's a doctor, and how they need to get there. Robert gives Alex a gun, and although they cannot kill the creatures, they use the guns to shoot their claws as they try to jump on the van. Eventually, their van flips and a creature climbs on top. Martin, who was unconscious, makes a sound, and desperate to protect him, Alex fires on the creature. Before it can kill Alex, Robert steps in and is killed. Laura looks at Alex, clearly blaming her for what just happened to her husband. Nearly 4 months later, 105 days since the invasion, Alex, Martin and their group of survivors are holed up at the hospital. They're running out of food and supplies, so Alex and Martin have arrived at the nearby Red Cloud Ranch in order to try and scavenge some. Things are so bad at the hospital that rations have been cut in half. They soon find that whoever lived at the ranch, many people by the looks of it, are all dead, after a bunch of raiders had killed everyone there. Alex also writes about how Laura hates her, even more so now that she is apparently putting Martin in danger, even if this little supply run was his idea all along. Anyway, moving through the ranch, being quiet as possible, Alex drops down into the medical room and finds some anti-nausea tablets. She's been complaining of a stomach bug, but she also finds a pregnancy test. Deciding to try and rule that out, she carries out the test and, yep, she's pregnant. Her and Martin are now expecting. There's not much else there in terms of supplies for the hospital, as the raiders took it all. She did, however, find a map detailing the location of a camp where the National Guard is supposed to be. Speaking with Martin, he shows her an underground safe room which is soundproof, and it means that they are able to speak clearly with one another. Alex shares the news that she's pregnant and Martin is delighted. Alex freaks out though, and they discuss how they're going to be able to look after this baby in this new world that they live in. He found her a glove which he gifts to her, and the two then spend the night in the safe room, and the following morning, well rested, they leave the ranch. 2 weeks later, Alex is speaking with her father, Kenneth. He's asking her how she's been getting on with a device called a phonometer. He says that he's heading down to their rations. It seems that she hadn't told her dad about her pregnancy, but he says that he's known for a while, as he is, after all, a doctor. Alex reveals that not even Laura knows about the pregnancy. Kenneth reveals that since Martin's death, Laura has stepped away from leading the group, and now a guy called Mark is running things, which, according to Kenneth, is bad news for everyone. Alex suggests they leave, mentioning the National Guard outpost from the map she found. Kenneth is apprehensive and tells Alex they should stay put, at least until he's able to find a radio and can verify if there's anyone there at the camp. Looking for a battery for her flashlight, Kenneth tells her she can find one in the supply closet. Heading to the supply closet, she overhears a conversation between Mark and a guy called Raoul. Mark is basically accusing Raoul of stealing the medical supplies. Pills, to which Raoul protests his innocence and says that it was probably one of the many people that have abandoned the group on accounts of poor leadership. Anyway, quietly making her way through the hospital, she makes it to the supply room and finds some nausea pills and batteries. She is surprised by Mark, who acts all creepy and threatening before walking away. She heads back to her room in order to finish the phonometer, and she then falls asleep at her desk. Waking up, Laura has found the pregnancy test and says that she won't let Alex hurt another member of her family and locks her in the room. Refusing to be kept there, Alex attempts to unscrew the vent in her room, but is surprised by her father. He says that she's right, and that they need to leave. Alex grabs her things and follows Kenneth, and he leads her to a vent, telling her to meet him at the camp as he'll make his own way there. He is then confronted by Laura and Mark. Crawling through the vents and using her phonometer to try and stay quieter than the noise of the environment around her, Alex eventually comes face to face with a Death Angel. Giving it a wide berth, she makes it to the entrance, but the entrance is unusable, meaning she must go through the garage. Of course, there's a creature down there, but she does eventually manage to sneak around it and out of the fire escape, leaving the hospital. Remembering what her father has told her to follow the train tracks to the camp, Alex moves through the forest. She has to be even more careful now, as the forest has many things around that can cause noise. However, she is somewhat protected by the sound of the high winds. At a clearing, she spots Laura and Mark, both of them armed and clearly looking for Alex and Kenneth. Avoiding them and carrying on following the train tracks, Alex finds that the tracks are blocked and that she must go through the forest instead. She hears gunshots and sees Mark get killed by the creature. Alex must now creep round the creature, avoiding it while it hunts. After a tense and grueling journey and after a few close encounters, Alex makes it to a house in which all the residents are deceased. She makes her way through the house and is confronted on the upper floors by Laura, who is holding a weapon. Scared for her life, Alex escapes out of a nearby window, escaping Laura, but alerting the creature who is now prowling around looking for her. Managing to use a plank to traverse a gap, she leaves the property and is once again back in the forest. A short ways through, after avoiding many bear traps, she comes across an adventure camp. There's no one there, of course, but inside the camp she enters a radio hut, and to her surprise she finds her dad inside. He's injured, but he'll be okay. He explains that the group that were there at the adventure camp left a while ago, and they were in contact with someone via the radio. As Kenneth is injured, Alex needs to go to the nearby watchtower and make contact with them. Making her way forward, she passes through a very dusty storage area and climbs the watchtower. She hears a message from the National Guard, which says that all units should convene at the harbour in a place called Clinton, where the National Guard are loading boats and are going to an island as the creatures cannot swim. Kenneth asks Alex to meet him back at the radio station. However, approaching, with Kenneth dead, and it not clear whether Laura is dead too, Alex has no choice but to push on towards the harbour in Clinton. Leaving the camp, she discovers a waterfall, and she takes the chance to cry and to mourn her father behind the protection of the noise from the waterfall. After getting some sleep and moving through the caves, Alex comes to a bird-watching spot. Eventually, she hops a fence and arrives at a train yard. Making her way through the trains, she is not alone and is joined by a Death Angel. Careful not to alert it and moving through the other train cars, she discovers that she is not entirely safe when moving slowly now, as when the creatures do this, they are scanning for any sign of movement. Evading more Death Angels, Alex has to make a run for it, as she is chased by one. Sliding into an open window, Alex is now inside the pump station. However, she is out of luck, as her flashlight is broken. She has to use flares if she needs light now. Entering the pump station itself, she finds it abandoned, but documents and memos scattered about the place reveal that two workers named Pat and Devon tried to keep the pump station going after the invasion, as people needed clean water, but one, Pat, left to go get supplies and didn't return, and Devon, we can only assume, died. What Alex needs to do is drain a water tank to use a small maintenance corridor underneath the pool, so avoiding a Death Angel, she uses valves and manages to drain the pool. Passing underneath it, she comes to a door and finds a replacement light. However, this one uses a dynamo and needs to be charged periodically, which of course means noise. Taking the ladder up and out of the pump station, Alex has arrived at the harbour. Making her way through a garage, Alex hops through a window and sees a message on the wall from the National Guard. It states that to get to the harbour, she needs to head through the tech store to the 24/7 market and across the top of the store. There's a slight problem though. An electronic door impedes her progress, and it needs some power. In order to power the door, she'll need to head through a very dusty warehouse. Being hunted by another Death Angel, Alex sneaks silently through the building and is able to get the power on. Heading through the tech store, she sees that the electronics inside the store do something to one of the creatures, and it freaks out, running away. Small wins, I guess. Heading up and across the roofs of the stores, and through a diner, Alex comes to the boatyard, and finding her way through that, she discovers that there is no boat in the harbour. Out of options and desperate, Alex pushes on anyway. Inside a building, she falls through a grate making noise and draws the attention of a nearby death angel. Throwing something near to a screen again messes with the creature and distracts it long enough for her to make her escape. She moves quietly and quickly through the building and to the other end, and she enters a room full of monitors. She spots the feed for the fire station and sees a boat there. Thankfully, the fire station is not too far away, and Alex, after avoiding another creature, enters. Messing with fuses across the fire station in order to power up certain doors whilst trying not to alert the creature, Alex ends up sparking a fire in the station. However, the sprinkler system fails, so she needs to get it going again to stop the fire from spreading, and the fire is blocking a crucial shutter that she needs to open in order to get out. She needs to head through the underground training pool, so heading in, avoiding the creature and playing with more valves, she drains the pools and gets the sprinklers working again before heading back to the shutter. Problem is that because of the fire, it's super smoky in there, and attempting to open the shutter using the valve, she passes out due to her asthma. She is approached by someone who is wearing a gas mask, and the person drags her to safety. To her surprise, that person is Laura. She is apologetic and says that she's glad Alex and the baby are safe. She gives her the gas mask and tells her to go, and the two say goodbye, and using the gas mask, things are a lot easier for Alex now. But the danger is not over, as she still needs to make her way through one final area and to the boat. Using various items as distractions and the sprinklers as cover, she makes it to the boat, fires it up and escapes, with a creature jumping into the water, seemingly drowning. She hears an almighty racket coming from the lighthouse. It appears that Laura, in an effort to redeem herself and to save Alex and her unborn grandchild, has lured the creatures towards the lighthouse. The creature that threw itself into the water, though, has grabbed the boat, leading to Alex shooting it in the face with a shotgun. She sails until morning and then hears someone over the radio, and they talk about a nearby island that the creatures cannot get to, indicating that Alex has found her way to safety and can rebuild her life, and the game then ends. The aftermath, of course, is that on an island surrounded by water, Alex and her child will be safe. Although, as we did see from A Quiet Place Part 2, that's not necessarily the case. As explained earlier, A Quiet Place Day 1 has already happened by the point the majority of the game takes place, and Quiet Place 1 and 2 take place from day 456, pretty much 1 year later than the game's events. But that's it for the story of A Quiet Place: The Road Ahead. A pretty decent experience, and I thoroughly enjoyed my time with the game. Like I mentioned before, there were side stories to each area, and I often actually found myself more invested in these side stories than the main storyline. There was one with a man who owned and ran a diner in the harbour. One of his customers was a lady with a young daughter named Zoe. The mother died and the man looked after Zoe. She would draw him as a hero in a comic she made. One day a couple went into the diner looking for food, and in exchange offered to take Zoe to the boats, whilst the owner of the diner stayed behind. The two people transporting her there, Annie and Lee, died, killed by a death angel. She was later found by a couple of soldiers from the National Guard, but after that, her fate is left undetermined, but we can only assume that she'd made it to the island. There are many more of these side stories. The game introducing new mechanics into the story as you progress through it was one of the game's strong points too, as this kept the game fresh and the pacing was pretty good. This video ended up being a recap more than an explain video, as the story wasn't really that complex. But anyway, if you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like and comment your thoughts down below. Subscribe if you aren't already, but for now, take care, and I will see you in the next one.